Jennifer, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And you're joining us from a place everybody wants to get to at some point.
I am in Honolulu, Hawaii, so it's
Oh my
beautiful right now.
good. When is it not beautiful there?
Well, it's been flooding
Oh, I
past
heard.
couple of days.
Yeah, pretty
So
bad
that
too.
wasn't fun, but it's nice and sunny today.
I can see the sun coming through your window there in the background.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, everybody is trying to get to Hawaii at some point in their life. Everybody.
it is. And it's one of those places where you just have to make sure that you have nothing planned on your schedule
Why?
because you just want to take in the beauty and just
Ah,
relax. Like I hear people here that they come here and they schedule every single tourist attraction thing on the list, and all they're doing is waiting in lines all
right.
day long. So I'm like, when you come here, just schedule a couple of things, but make sure you just have time to relax.
Okay. So I'm going to send out a special message to Deidre right now. Deidre's my wife. Deidre, please listen to Jennifer. What she's saying, she's a local. Don't overschedule us on vacation. Yeah. You know,
Absolutely.
it's funny. One of the exercises that I do when I'm coaching people is imagine that you finally got a chance to go on a vacation to Hawaii, but you agreed with your wife or your spouse, husband or wife, that you're not going to work on the whole vacation except for one meeting for 1 hour. And you're going to go back to your hotel room or your Airbnb and make a phone call back to the company. Who would you talk to and what would you ask? That's half of the exercise, but it's so funny having that discussion with people because they're like, oh, okay, we know exactly where we're going to go in Hawaii and we know exactly what we're going to do. And I'm like, okay, but you're not allowed to work. If you're an owner, you got to go there and not work, right? You got to let yourself go.
Hmm.
Um, let's get to today's topic because Jennifer, you're an expert in debt.
Yes.
Yeah. How did that come? Like, who are you, Jennifer? And how is it that you come to be talking to all of these business owners in construction about dealing with debt?
Yeah. So, in a nutshell, back in 2012, we had found Dave Ramsey and we were doing what Dave calls Dave-ish, like we knew about his plan, we were following, but not to the letter. We were kind of
Mm,
just doing our own thing. And then it came about in 2016 where I was just tired. I was working in a job that paid really well. It was a sales position as a business development manager for a staffing company, but I never saw my family.
oh,
And I thought, this is the only way that I'm going to be able to pay off debt is to get a good job and to make a lot of money. And so our family could live well. So in my journey, I've never had a problem making money. Like, you know,
that's good.
there's always ways to make money.
Right.
The problem with me is keeping the money in my
Oh,
bank account. So
because there's always ways
I,
to spend it too, right?
yes.
Yeah.
So I say like I have shiny object syndrome, and right now with December, it's super hard to go in the store and then walk away and say that I don't need it.
Mm,
So going back to my story, in 2016, I was like, okay, I've had it. I wanted to go back to my former employer that didn't have the sales commission component, but had good benefits and was a good salary and would allow me to work from home.
right.
But the only way that I was going to get there is that I needed to make sure that my finances were good so we weren't in the red every single month.
Okay.
And so we started going down this rabbit hole of, okay, what are the steps that I actually need to do to get out of debt? And the biggest thing was living on a budget. It's one thing if you're going to make a budget and it
Yeah.
looks perfect on perfect stationery, or on a perfect
All the
Excel
numbers are
sheet
round numbers. There's
yes,
no
at the beginning of
37
the
cents.
month,
Yeah.
everything balances out. And then you forget about it the other month. You're like, well, I needed to buy this. I
Yeah.
needed to go out to eat. I work really hard,
I deserve
and
this.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No,
Sorry, I
saying
think you
I
cut out.
deserve this. Like when people say I deserve something, one of the things I learned a long time ago is not to confuse what I need and what I want.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So in 2016, that's when we started getting on a plan, but it wasn't until 2 years later that I really started to get motivated. So what
Mm,
happened between 2016 to 2018 was we were living on a plan, but I felt like I was living under a rock. I was on that Dave Ramsey's bean and rice and beans diet, not going out to see my friends, saying no to every opportunity to go on vacation or
yeah.
to go out. And then in 2018, I had heard a podcast about this couple that's saying that they were mystery shoppers. And I thought, okay, I thought that was always a scam. So I went down, looking and researching every single day into what mystery shopping was.
Right.
And I found that I really liked it because it allowed my love of shopping and to get paid to shop. And I used all of that money that I earned from mystery shopping to pay off our debt.
Wow.
So in 1 year, we were able to pay off $41,000 of debt with all of our side hustles, including our income. And at that point was when I felt like I wasn't stuck. And
Right.
so in the Budget Divas community that I've created, I never want people to feel like they're stuck, that they're always backed into a corner.
Yeah.
There's never a way out. They're always going to be living this way.
So let me go back for a second. You put a plan together. You had the intention of getting yourself out of debt. And how was that debt showing up in your family? Like, was it such that you were actually getting collections calls, or you just realized you couldn't actually spend on the things you needed to because you didn't have the credit limits, or where was that showing up?
It was a lot of student loan debt. So when I
Oh,
say
okay.
we, it was me. It was my student loan debt. And every
Okay.
time I would see a payment go through, most of it was only going to the interest.
Oh,
It wasn't
painful.
even hitting the
Right.
principal.
And so you recognize that you had this problem that needed to be dealt with. It's just not going to go away. This is debt, and it's got to be dealt with. But it took you 2 years of really thinking about it and beating away at it before you finally got some traction. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, so the first
Wow.
2 years we were living on a budget
Mm.
and but we weren't doing anything fun. We had cut our grocery bill to practically nothing. Well, our friends thought that we were having marriage problems because we would always say, "No, we can't go out
Can't go
with
out.
you,"
Yeah,
or,
yeah, yeah.
"We're busy." And they're like, "What's going on?" Um, but it was just that I was just tired. I was really tired. And, like I said, um, there's always ways to make money, but I
Mm.
didn't know about this side hustle thing that's so that everybody's doing nowadays. And so when I found a side hustle in 2018 that I loved
Mm.
and that was going to help us push us to the next step, then that's when I started feeling better, was more motivated, and just felt empowered.
Yeah, like you were taking a chunk out of this debt that was hanging over your head like like the dark cloud we talked about, right?
Yes,
Now,
absolutely.
now the audience here is business owners. Their side hustle is their business. But I brought you on here because I really wanted to hear how you did it in your personal life. And I was impressed because when you and I had our pre-interview, it's all the same things that we need to do in our business. If we're dealing with debt, if we've got a huge piece of machinery that we bought, maybe we didn't need to buy it, maybe it's a toy we did need to buy. Regardless, we've got some debt, we've got to take care of it. And I really like the system that you had. It's super simple. And I'd like to learn more from you today about how that system can work, whether it's for yourself, our listeners, as a person or as a business owner. You've got a three-step, really basic, solid, workable way of getting yourself out from under debt.
Sure. So the same principles with having your own business or just being employed by another business is the same. My husband has a business and he's been in business for about 20 years, so
Mm.
kind of know a little bit about how this works.
Yeah.
um, the first thing that needs to be done is to start a budget. And this is going to be the hardest step because it's the step that tells you I'm not going to go back. I'm not going to go backwards. I need to to get the dirt under the carpet and stop sweeping it away,
Right.
look at it, shine the light on it, and then deal with it.
How do you
So
start
the
that?
first
Sorry to cut you off, but how do I start a budget? Like, I'm thinking again of business owners who go, I don't know how to build a budget. And I want to hear your answer because I've got suggestions, but where do I start if I've never built a budget before?
So the first thing that I recommend is you need to put your bills together. You need to gather everything that comes out of your bank account and everything that comes into your bank account. Know exactly what your numbers are. If you don't know what your numbers are and you just kind of say, well, I think it's this much, you're not going to get to that final dollar of
Right.
this is how much I need to bring into my business. This is how much I need to be making every month so that I'm not in the red. So how you do a budget is there's so many systems out there. There's apps, there's Excel spreadsheets. If you've never done a budget before
Mm,
or you've done one a really long time ago, I always recommend putting it on paper first.
yeah.
So I have a paper template that I use, and you put all of your numbers, you put all of your income, you put all of your fixed expenses first. So
Right.
everything that you absolutely have to pay for every single month. And then it comes with your other expenses and then your debt.
Right.
And then you can see what that final number is and then make changes along the way. So if you're in the red of $500, you probably need to cut some of those extra expenses. Probably need to be eating out less, spending less on your machinery,
Right.
not going to the hardware store as much and buying
Yeah.
tools
Just
that
buying
maybe you
smart.
can
Yeah.
buy it later or borrow from someone. Like places like Home Depot, they have where you can rent machinery instead of buying it. I don't know what the price points are, but I would think that you could do that in the interim while you're saving to
Yeah.
purchase that machinery.
You just were, instead of me telling my story, because I've got a funny and embarrassing story about myself. The first time you sat down to look at all of your expenses, I'm sure it was, somewhere at the desk or kitchen table, or maybe your living room table. You got all the bills everywhere. Did you find something that totally surprised you in your expenses?
Yeah, and that's another thing too. When you start looking at your expenses, you're like, why am I paying for this subscription that I haven't been using in the
Mm,
past 2 years?
that's what happened to me. Yeah. Yeah. And so did you find like, oh my, it's so easy. We're going to cut that subscription and there's $30 or there's $300. And yeah.
Yes, and it's the same thing for business expenses too. There just so happened that I was looking at my statement and I saw a charge that I haven't been using for a year.
Was it the
And
gym
so,
membership? Because a lot of us have the gym membership that sits there and never gets used.
no, it was something for my business
Oh, okay.
that they were charging me, and I knew I had canceled it in the past. Prior to me doing a budget, I would probably have just let it go. I probably would have just swept it under the carpet and be like, well, it's okay, I'll deal with it later. But
Yeah.
now that I'm paying attention to my numbers, if there's something that shouldn't be there, I'm calling right away saying, hey, can you remove this charge from my statement? It should not be there. And it just gives you empowerment. Like
Yeah.
it makes you feel like you're on top of the world, knowing that you're in control of your life.
Yeah. So the first step, because when I talk to people about putting a budget together, I get that glazed look like, okay, that is not fun. It's going to be boring. And how do I even start? And now then the internal self-talk starts to ramp up. Can I just give everybody a little funny story that maybe they can relate to? That'll
Sure.
inspire them. I want to inspire them to go find these expenses. When Deidre and I first got married a long time ago, we sat down to do our expenses because now we were in the same house and all that stuff. And Deidre, my wife, is very detail oriented. And she's like, hey, there's car insurance on here. And I'm like, yeah, of course there's car insurance. You got to pay car insurance, right? She's like, yeah, but it's twice. And I'm like, well, maybe it's for my utility trailer. She's like, no, it's on the same. I think I had a Jeep at the time. Somehow I had managed to buy vehicle insurance twice. And I was paying for insurance, two different insurances for the same thing on the same vehicle. And I was paying every month happily to the insurance company, who wasn't going to tell me, of course, that I was paying two different insurance companies. And so, yeah, Deidre still laughs about that today, but that's hundreds of dollars a month. And at the time, I was still working in corporate. You know, you making the big check and expense accounts and everything all over the place. I just didn't have time to go and look at the numbers, but I've been paying hundreds of dollars a month to insure my vehicle twice. Crazy.
It is amazing how these companies won't tell you.
Yeah.
And it's like your cell phone bill. You should always question your cell phone bill because at the beginning, when you first sign up, they'll give you a really good rate. And then
Mm,
they'll kind of spike it up just little by little that you don't know that it's happening. And then by the time you know it, you're paying $50 to maybe even $100 more than you were when you first started.
mm, yeah.
And we're looking at the charges, you're like, what is this? These kind of charges and these, and I've dealt with that before. I've dealt with that and I've called them on it. And I've said, look, I've been a loyal customer for 10 years.
Yeah.
Why are you charging me an extra $100? What can you do for me? And sometimes they can't do anything for me. And so I've switched. But that's the beauty of it, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you don't have to stay with one
You're
company
in
and they
control.
should not give discounts just for new customers. They should give it to their loyal customers.
Perfect. So number one is start with a budget. And you know, this applies for business owners as well. Sit down with your accountant or your finance person and sit with them. I know it might be like pulling teeth. You just might think it's the driest, most boring thing in the world, but running a business is running numbers. And so you're going to have to set aside, I don't know, how often do you do it, Jennifer? Once a week, once a month, once every 2 weeks?
I do a budget at the end of the month for the following month.
Yeah.
So I'm putting together everything that I know I'm going to have to pay for the following month, but then I'm reconciling every single week. And
Ah,
so
okay.
I'm not the type where I want to be putting in 20 transactions in my budget for the entire week. So I'll make sure that maybe it's just one or two transactions. So I'm only going to the store to purchase things for my business or for personal only once or twice a week. So it's easy to reconcile and it doesn't feel like a chore.
Okay. So start with budgets. That's step number one of this system for getting ourselves out of debt. Actually, as I'm listening to this interview, I'm hoping people can pass it on to other people in their family. I guess it's not just for business owners. If somebody listening has one of their kids who's racking up college debt, or somebody else in their family that's dealing with debt, these strategies work on your personal side as well as the business side.
Absolutely. So, step number two would be to decrease your expenses, whether it's for business or it's for personal. There's
Mm,
always expenses in our budget that we can cut, that we can do better. For example, groceries. This is the number one thing that people bust in their budget. When I first started, I thought, $200 a month for a family of three, great. And I would spend the full $200 in that first week thinking, I'm smart. I'm going to buy all the groceries for the month and we don't have to do any grocery spending for the rest of the month. Well, what happens? The next month comes, oh, I'm out of milk. I'm out
yeah,
of eggs. I'm out of flour. You
yeah,
need to go back to the grocery store and just busted your budget. And then you think, well, this budgeting thing doesn't work
yeah.
because
It's
I
just the wrong
tried
number.
and
Two or three hundred
it
dollars is not
didn't do
even a trip
it.
to Costco. It's you can really blow that budget quickly.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So when you decrease your expenses, start with the things that you absolutely don't need or you can do without for now. So maybe you run outside instead of going to the gym. Maybe you cancel that um, music subscription and you listen to it for free on YouTube for now. Just for now until you can get a handle on your expenses. And sometimes you'll find that you didn't really need those in the first place. When we canceled like our cable, we didn't need it. We didn't really watch it because we had other things that were cheaper than cable,
yeah,
Netflix and Hulu and so forth.
yeah.
And so you just start to adjust and that's the number one thing that you have to remember in business as well, right? Like everything is fluid, nothing just stays the same, and you have to go with the changing of times.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with your budget. Your budget will never stay the same, it's always going to change with your seasons of life.
I know that talking about budgeting and controlling expenses. In one of my past companies, we had an office coffee service. So they came in and of course they rent you the coffee machines. We had 120, 140 staff in that company. And so we did a budget. And they helped us with it. This is how much it's going to cost to have coffee. And then we'll also provide tea and other things in case people want that. Well, the and other things turned out to be hot chocolate and some other, I don't know, some other stuff that you could get in a packet. I think it was oatmeal or something. And so they started putting hot chocolate in the cupboards above the coffee machine. Well, my staff went nuts. They were taking home packets of hot chocolate. And our expenses on the coffee, which we thought were fixed, suddenly just went out of control. But I didn't know that, of course, until my accountant came to me and said, "Hey, did you like just spent $400 this month on coffee?" I'm like, "That's a lot of coffee compared to what we had been paying for everybody." And I realized that they had this discretionary, they put them there as optional. Well, of course, my staff was going to take them. Who wouldn't take packets of hot chocolate home for their kids? But people were taking boxes of the stuff. They weren't just taking one or two, they were just taking entire boxes. So we had to go back and look at those expenses as well. Yes, I want to provide coffee and tea. Okay, I'll provide tea, but that's what I'm providing, coffee and tea. You can bring your own other stuff if you want. But even the expenses that we think are fixed need to be revisited every once in a while, right? If it's
Absolutely.
fasteners, if it's adhesives, if it's how we're using the gas card at the gas station. And by the way, some gas cards allow you to buy things at the convenience store inside. And one of our smart but maybe not so ethical people in the field might realize he or she can add a bag of chips and a can of soda to the gas purchase, and it just looks like a gas purchase. So you have to be really careful with those things. Pay attention.
Yeah, going to the convenience store located at the gas station can cost an extra 5, 10, maybe even $20 each time you go.
Yeah, adds up fast. So that's number two. What's number three? I'm worried about number three. What is number three, an easy one too?
So number 3 is to increase your income, which
Love it.
for a lot of business owners might seem that it's easy. I thought, oh, it's easy to increase my income. I just have to make more. But then once you start increasing your income, then your expenses might also increase as well. So this one kind of comes with a caveat, if you may. So
Mhm.
once you increase your income, you have to put aside some of that into savings for future purposes. But what I found is that when I was putting everything into debt from 2016 to 2018, and then from 2018 to 2020, when we really started getting focused, was I gave myself an amount for discretionary income. So I wasn't living,
So you
I was
finally had
able
the
to
chance to
have,
go out and do things.
yeah, so I was able to have, those coffee dates with my friends, lunch dates,
Yeah,
buy
yeah.
something nice for myself. My husband is a tool guy, so he was very happy to have more income to go to the
To
hardware
go buy
store and pick up
toys,
those
tools.
tools.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
his toys. Um,
Did he
so that
convince
would
you,
be
by
the
the
third
way?
step.
Did he convince you that he needed a Martinello hammer?
No.
Okay, just checking because he needs one, Jennifer.
Okay, I will let him know that.
No, don't. Everybody on the show is laughing right now. They're very expensive titanium hammers, but he absolutely needs it. I mean, he probably deserves it, Jennifer, is what I'm saying. I'm I'm
Maybe.
I'm being a brat right now for sure. Yeah,
He can decide if he wants to make, and that's the thing too about increasing your income. It's like if I wanted something, prior to increasing my income, I would be like, well, I can't afford it because all of this money needs to go to debt. And then when we started increasing it, we're like, yes, some of that money, extra money that we're making is going to go to debt, but I'm going to allow myself like just a small percentage, just maybe like 10% of that to save it so that I can purchase that bigger purchase.
so
So
you
going
budgeted that as well. You budgeted the discretionary stuff too, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So my bonus tip is that so first the 3 steps is one is to do your budget. 2 is to decrease your expenses, and 3 is to increase your income. The bonus tip for your listeners is that have an online savings account. And the one that I recommend is called Ally Bank. So, do you remember back in the day when you used to have like jars where you'll say, this jar is for my vacation fund, this is for
Right.
my car fund, etc.
Swear
Well,
fund,
yeah.
swear
So
jar.
you can plan that for your business expenses as well. So if you know that, you need to pay for Zoom or you need to pay for your web hosting or whatever, and that comes once a year, plan it out and put that money, sock it away into what Ally Bank calls buckets. You can have a bucket for your machinery. You can have your
Yeah.
bucket for,
Taxes.
taxes,
Yeah.
etc. And then the beauty of it is when you pay in full, they probably will give you a discount. It's like your insurance, right? If you pay 6 months or annually, you will get a
Mhm.
discount versus paying monthly.
It's
So that is my
amazing.
bonus tip. Plus, you are earning interest. Not that much, but at least you're earning something on the
But
money that you're putting away into this online savings account.
every win is a win.
Every win is a win. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
The interesting thing about what you're saying there is we hear these things in so many different places. And so when I hear them from people I trust and I see other people's systems that are working, there has to be there. I look at them as cracks in the darkness. There's a little bit of light coming through. There's a book called Profit First, written by Mike Michalowicz. I don't know if you've had a chance to read that, but
I
he talks
have.
about paying yourself first, which I think is also in the Millionaire Next Door and a whole bunch of other books over the years, like generations ago. But taking out the profit first or paying yourself first, putting it aside. You mentioned Allied Bank and buckets. Well, Mike Michalowicz talks about plates. He's like, you have different plates. And one of the plates that you put money onto goes to a bank account you can't touch. The only thing you can do is put money in. But like wise business owners who are trying to find ways to make the most of their company, take that money off first, and then they put it into this other account that they can't touch in a different bank. And it really helps them to do things like say, this is going to be tax money. This is going to be money because we need a new piece of machine. You want to buy a ditch witch or you want to buy a CNC or whatever your industry needs, new pressure washer. Everybody's wish list is different for what their company needs. But having that discipline in the beginning really helps you later on in the end to get what you need and to be debt free at some point. How are you now on debt handling? Not that you need to be debt free, but do you feel like you're in a control position or do you feel still reactive in the world of debt?
I just went to Target the other day and there were so many shiny things that I wanted to buy.
Yeah.
But I told myself that, you know what? It's not even worth it. The money that I have in the bank is much more important than buying those Christmas decorations. That's probably, I'm going to get tired of it as soon as Christmas is over.
That's right. Yeah. Or the cat's going to knock off the tree and break or something like that. Right.
Yeah, so my main goal when I first started was to walk in an expensive store, look at the item, know that I had the money to buy it, but walk away because I knew that having the money in my savings was much more important than having that item.
Oh my gosh. Do you know, it's funny you say that. It just reminded me of something. I say this to my wife all the time. I actually like wanting things more than I like having things. So I love fishing and I love hunting and I love, and there's so much gear that goes along with that, right? And so I will think about, for instance, buying a new long range spotting scope. I'm thinking about it now. I've been thinking about it for years. It's not like I don't need one. Heck, I don't even have a chainsaw, and I'm exactly the guy who you think needs a chainsaw because I'm always in the back road somewhere. But I like thinking about wanting a chainsaw more than I want to go buy one and have it sit on my shelf in the garage and never be able to use it. So it's funny that you came to that same place as I do. I like just knowing that I'm researching it and thinking about it, but I don't need to go buy it.
Right, exactly. But there will come a time when you're going to want that item.
I know I need the chainsaw because all I have in my truck is a bow saw and an axe. And I really hope that I don't get stuck in a situation where I've got to cut through a 6-foot Douglas fir that fell across the road to stop me from getting back out. But I've now jinxed myself, Jennifer. I need to go buy the chainsaw, basically.
Yes, But like you said, you put that money aside in a bank account that you can't touch so that you have the option to
when
buy
I,
it when you
right.
want it. And that's the beauty of budgeting. People think, oh, budgets, they're such a Debbie Downer. And, you know, the one thing is that I never want to be labeled as a frugal person. And that might not stir with some people, but I always say that I want to be known as the intentional person. Because if I want to buy something expensive and I have
Mhm.
the money in the bank, I'm going to go buy it. I don't care what you think. I don't
Your
care
face
what
just
anyone
changed.
else
Like, I'm buying
thinks.
this thing. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And some people might be like, well, that's not frugal. Hey, I worked hard, I've saved, I've sacrificed in other places. If I want to buy a $5,000 handbag, which I probably won't, but if I did, I'm going to go ahead and buy it just because
Well,
I can.
when your husband buys the Martinello stiletto hammer, you go out and buy yourself that handbag and you'll be just about even.
Exactly.
Jennifer, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate this. And I like it's such a simple system. It makes sense. And I like that a lot. If somebody wants to find you, reach out to you, ask you more questions about dealing with debt, how do we find you in this big wide world?
Sure. So I have a website at budgetdivas.com. I also have a podcast called Budget Divas. And especially for your listeners, if you would like a free resource, you can go to budgetdivas.com/reset and get that quick handout that's going to give you those quick wins.
And sorry, slash reset, reset.
Yes.
Okay.
Reset for 2022.
Oh, perfect timing. Reset for 2022. Well timed. Yeah. Because this episode will be going live sometime in January. So that's perfect timing.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Jennifer. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
I can't wait to get to Hawaii again. I got to tell you, I love it there.
Yes. And make sure you only have that one meeting on your calendar.
I know, one meeting for 1 hour, back to the shop. Yeah. All right. Thanks very, very much, Jennifer. Maybe we'll have you back in the future again.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye bye.